We are back for the latest edition of iRacing Happy Hour, where from the virtual Motorland Aragon, we bring you coverage of the Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge. A warm bienvenidos to all those watching, including TikTok for the very first time, where alongside Joshua Lee and Joey Atterbury, my name is Kenneth Bueno. And Josh, we're so excited to be back for iRacing Happy Hour. I'm sure you are as well. How are you feeling about the sports car challenge that we'll be facing tonight with Motorland Aragon as the center stage?
I'm always excited to watch the real racers of iRacing go racing on a platform like this on iRacing Happy Hour. But we're back to multi-class. We're back to the new LMP3s that we saw in the last Happy Hour in June used against AI on the streets of Chicago. Now we get to see that car really take center stage in the spotlight in the Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge.
And Josh, a great point. Joey as well. When we talk about all the drivers on iRacing, they get the chance to be on an iRacing broadcast, get to be in the spotlight for a little bit, but also a challenge on their hands with the LMP3s and these GT4 cars. What's the challenge at stake for these drivers as they take on this new track on the sim?
Well, I think you just mentioned it, a new track, Aragon, out here, and also the challenge of mixed class racing. We got the LMP3 car, the Ligier out there, the JSP 320, as well as the entire GT4 class, a handful of different mixed contenders out there, so it'll be non-stop action.
It'll be a lot of fun for sure as we take on Motorland Aragon. And Josh Lee, take us through this track located in Alcañiz, Spain.
Well, the track's new to iRacing, but also relatively new in the real world as well, opening up back in 2009. We're using the motorcycle configuration tonight, which lends us to a little over 5 kilometers in total length, about 3.15 miles. 17 turns around this track that is rather challenging. You see the technical portions through the opening 2 sectors, and then that last sector, instead of that kind of hairpin corner leading back into the front straightaway, we get a long sweeping left-hander to bring us back to the pit straight.
It's a beautiful track and one of the newest on the iRacing service. And Joey, we have the track, but we have to talk about the cars. What type of cars will we see here in this iRacing Happy Hour?
I mentioned mixed class. Here we have the GT4 cars, a little bit of everything out there. We've got Aston Martin, Mercedes, BMW, McLaren, and also the Porsche Cayman. They are all in that GT4 class. As you see, a little bit of something for everybody. You got some mid-engine rear drive, a lot of front-engine rear drive cars, but each one has their own little personality, and there's so many to choose from, so you definitely got to go and choose them all. And this is the other one, the faster of the 2 classes. It is the Ligier JSP 320, also known as the LMP3. Get a little bit of a rundown here. 460 horsepower out of that V8. It produces some amazing sounds. 950 kilos, or about 2,100 pounds, and it is available to race in the LMP3 Turn Racing Trophy Series, as well as a handful of other series here on iRacing.
It's a super competitive car, a lot of fun to drive on the sim, and gotta give credit to the photographer of all of these shots. Way too much beauty in watching this car take on to the track, and a bunch of great stats as well as they get to take on the GT4s here at Motorland Aragon. I mean, these pictures continue to go around, just really cool. And if you want to be a part of the action and get a taste of these cars out on the sim, you can do so by using iRacing.com, a sim that you can take these cars out on track no matter where you go. And as we head to the track, we'll take a look at qualifying as it starts roughly 6 minutes and 12 seconds left. And Josh, we're going to see the little intricacies of this Motorland Aragon circuit, all the tight corners, all the long straights, that we get to demonstrate just how cool these cars are on it.
And we take a look at the number 10 of Norbert Frank get started on his qualifying efforts. He's coming to take the green flag, and we'll look at the number 2 on board with Nick Fittison as he works his way on his first flying lap. Here's those intricate left-handers that we saw, and let's listen to this beautiful sounding LMP3 as it roars around Aragon.
watching that LMP3 car go through all the twists and turns here at Aragon. Now let's look at some of the GT4 cars. This is one of the Aston Martins on representation for this race as we get through to the sunset. And Joey, these GT4 cars, while a little slower than the LMP3 cars, they're going to be the second class in this Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge. They are a handful to drive. They can rip out of your hands in a couple of seconds before you even notice it. And as you go through this track, you also get to see how these drivers take it, as here's a look at one of the Mercedes out on the stage.
They are deceivingly fast. They kind of look like a car that you would see driving down the street, but trust me, they are 100% race car. These are not street cars that were then transformed into race cars. They are built from the chassis up as a race car. And like I said, there's just so many different manufacturers of GT4 here on iRacing. This is the Mercedes version of it. It does have a front engine rear wheel drive car with the big old V8 in the front of it. A little bit more mild to drive, but I can't say enough about the personalities of each one of them. You really have to go drive all of them.
It's the magic of multi-class racing, Josh, in the form that you can take any one of these cars out on track and they all feel very different in terms of speed, acceleration, handling. As this Mercedes goes through, that was Norbert Iwaniki. And let's take a look at one of the Porsches out on track and let's listen in. That was Niccolò Fornaciari in his number 23 Porsche Cayman GT4. And how about top of the board here in the LMP3 class? This is Nick Thyssen in the two. We looked at him just a little bit earlier, and he is one of the founders of a very known program on the iRacing service, ATVO, which I'm sure everybody pretty much knows about if you've been using iRacing for just a little bit. And you see him there as he takes the corners. Now off the final one, gonna head for this long straightaway. And Thyssen really fast, but I guess not enough to beat James Cockrum in the 15 to the top of the board with 2.5 minutes left in queue.
Spoke too soon there, Kenneth. As back up to the top of the board goes Nick Thyssen. They with a 1:44.475 last time, by 0.4 faster than James Cockrum, as we now focus on the number 8 machine. This is Istvan Tessie, currently third in class in the GT4s, looking to improve about a 10th to hop up over Louis Orgeval to get second place.
And Dexy here going to look for a pretty good lap in his McLaren, trying to beat Orgeval and Quintale. And Joey, you look at, as we get closer to the end of qualifying, how a little more desperate these drivers are getting. They're trying to make sure the track cools down so they can get as much grip as possible. And here you look at car number 3. This is Greg Profeta in his BMW GT4. So he comes around the circuit, and with the 2 laps given, you got to make sure you maximize every little bit this last minute and a half.
Yeah, it looks like he was able to put it P4 in that GT4 class. And you were mentioning the track and maybe the temperatures. One thing that I'm noticing that is just really cool to look at these sunrise conditions. It's almost providing a golden hour at some of the areas on the racetrack.
You might just take some selfies too as well, as you look at Christopher Butcher here in the number 5 car. He tries to go through this curving here. Downhill section, very tough chicane as you go down here through Aragon. And also, speaking of the scenic sky conditions we have, Josh, I mean, look at all the mountains that you'll have. Not here, looks relatively flat, but if you look onwards to your left, and as you go around this track, you'll take notice of all the mountains in the region of Alcañiz, Spain. It's a beautiful circuit, not only to drive on, but a beautiful one scenic-wise as well.
Especially lately on iRacing, we've been seeing a lot of very scenic tracks hit the sim, and love to see it. It's great for broadcast, great for everybody out there grabbing their in-sim pictures of their favorite cars and tracks. But as we continue on in qualifying, Kenneth, right now, 40 seconds remaining on that clock. Couple of final laps being put in as we take a look at a GT4 Mercedes coming across the line of Norbert Iwaniki in the 11. And it's not going to be enough for them to get to the top of the board, up to P6 in the middle of the GT4 field, as we look back on board with one of the final LMP3s coming across the line of Christopher Butcher. Let's see where he can put that car in the grid. It'll be P3 in class.
Hey, not bad. Third place for car number 5, and a little bit earlier, you were looking at the third place car, rather the second place car in the GT4 class, Luis Orgival in the 14, not able to beat Quintales, time of a 1:56.709. It's been a lot of fun watching qualifying so far, and if you're interested in racing these cars or this track, you can start your iRacing career today at iRacing.com. Join the hundreds of thousands of members that take millions, billions of laps here in this iRacing service. It's very, very fun. So if you want to learn how to get your sim racing career started, head over to iRacing.com. Let's bring you down trackside to the starting grid here for iRacing Happy Hour from Motorland Aragon in Alcañiz, Spain, where on the front row you will see Nick Thyssen in the 2, joined alongside by James Cockrum in the number 15. Row number 2 features Christopher Butcher in the number 5. Norbert Frank puts in a time good enough for 4th outside of row number 2. And then out in row number 3, you'll see Aston Wilby and Christopher Butcher. Rather, that's not Christopher Butcher, that is Ryan Ware in P6 as we take a look through the rest of the grid, Josh.
Mantis Povolitis going to start on the inside of row 4. Jose Skolj will start in P8. Rogero Santos will be in 9th with Duncan Roberts rounding out the top 10 qualifying in the LMP3s. Sander Dreyer and Joe Wortley are going to round out the first 6 rows of action as we continue on in the LMP3 class.
And then we have the first of our GT4s, our pole sitter, Alessandro Quintai in that number 1 car. Next to him is going to be Luis Orgival in a Mercedes as well. Starting 3rd in GT4, 13th overall is Istvan Desi, along with Greg Profeta in 4th place. Matti Laycock in 5th overall in GT4, and then Norbert Ivanki is going to be lining up next to him on row 3.
And then there's Sam Winton further down the grid. You look at Brett Puncari in the number 22, driving the McLaren, and Horacio Vallejos in the number 24 will round out the grid here from Motorland Aragon. 24 cars total. That's the last of the GT4s on the grid. So there's a look at the iRacing official pace car and the entire LMP3 field that will lead them to the start-finish line. GT4s will not be too far behind, but obviously you'll see the distance grow between those two. This race not necessarily that long, only 30 minutes, Josh Lee. So if you're any one of the drivers in the LMP3 class or the GT4s, you might want to hurry up when the green flag drops. You want to make sure you get as many positions as possible before the field thins out.
Not quite as long as the 4 hours of Aragon that we see in the Le Mans European Series in the real world, but 30 minutes is definitely a sprint. And we look at the weather right now, 78 degrees air temp shared with the track temp, 13-mile-an-hour winds as well. Knock that up a notch to P14 on the wind speed. This is, like I said, Kenneth, a sprint race. 30 minutes is not that long. We're only looking at about 16, 17, 18 laps that we're going to see these drivers run. It is go time from the drop of the green flag for whether you're an LMP3 or GT4 going for that class win. Gonna have to make stuff happen quick.
And for these LMP3 cars, with the way they are to drive, these drivers are going to be electric, especially those at around the mid-pack, trying to make sure they can topple some of those at the front of the field. So there you look at the separation between the LMP3 class and the GT4. So obviously, Joey, none of these cars are mixed yet, but as we roll through these 30 minutes, you're going to see them start to get closer and closer, and then you'll have the prime time of multi-class racing where both of these classes are going to be duking it out, either for position or just for space on track.
We've got about 12 cars in each class, so you got 12 LMP3 cars out there, as well as 12 of the GT4 cars. And you're right, it's going to take a little bit for these LMP3s to catch the back of the GT4 field, even though they do gap them out on the start a little bit. I think most crucially, at the front of that GT4 field, I see three different manufacturers in the top 4. The front row is Mercedes, but then there's McLaren and BMW immediately behind. So I can't wait to see how the manufacturer battle plays out.
That's definitely true. The battle of the manufacturers, Mercedes holding on to the front row. Everybody else, the McLaren and BMW and all the others, they're just going to try and look to get around those Mercedes cars that have the front of the field. So there's a look at the LMP3 category as they head through some of the final corners here at Motorland Aragon. And they're going to be taking the green flag in just a couple of moments. And Josh Lee, turn 1 is pretty treacherous. You look at a 90-degree left-hander. Are you expecting any sort of chaos on this opening lap?
I think it's tough not to expect that chaos heading into turn number 1. And honestly, here at Aragon, it kind of reminds me of Interlagos, that hard left-hand turn number 1. Everybody's going to have to be hard on the brakes. And with most of the field also being double file going into that opening corner, I expect to see a lot of beating and banging. However, they can keep it clean, and whoever can, especially starting further back in these LMP3s and in the GT4s, might give them a better opportunity to win, because nobody is going to be scheduled to hit pit road today, Kenneth. Everybody can make it to the end on both tires and fuel. If you hit pit road, that is to get damage fixed, and that will mean race over for anybody that sees their pit crew down there today.
Going to be a flat-out duel out on the racetrack. You look at the long straightaway from a turn 15 over to about turn 16 here, I believe is where we are on track. We're going to get just a couple of corners before we get to this green flag. Anticipation building for the front two. Nick Thyssen and James Cockrum ready to take the green flag as they rise up the hill. Now they're out of the final corner. Pace car is down. Nick Thyssen will hop on the gas pedal. We're green for the newest edition of iRacing Happy Hour.
Already got green flag racing. Look at this single file for our leader, and already problems in the GT4 class. Unfortunately, one of the Mercedes gets spun around going on the start here. Other than that, pretty calm and collected from the GT4s. GT3, or I should say LMP3, a little bit different though.
And we saw James Cockrum, who was second in line, go out of line in turn 1, dropped a couple of spots, and the car spinning was Louis Orgeval in the number 14, so he's trying to pick it up now from 22nd. The field led by Nick Thyssen as you look at the GT4 leader on the bottom end of your screen. Alessandro, actually that's not the leader, but behind the leader, that's Istvan Deshi in the number 8 machine, Alessandro Quintai in the number 1 machine right in front. Rather separated these two cars are, but everybody up at the LMP3 class rather congested here. Josh Lee from second on back. There's Christopher Buescher trying to play a little bit of defense on Aston Wilby and James Cockrum.
Cockrum went wide in turn number 1, and that stacked up this entire group, allowed the two of Nick Thyssen to just start pulling away. That's how we see the gap to the tune of about 1.4 seconds. But you mentioned the congestion back from there. Ryan Ware's all over the back bumper of James Cockrum. I also mentioned earlier, Kenneth, that this race is a sprint. Still only 28 minutes left on the clock and roughly about 17 laps. This race for third is going to be crucial, because as Christopher Buescher tries to clear this group, get away from the 4 of Austin Wilby in third, they need to catch up to the 2 of Nick Thyssen. If he keeps pulling away at the rate he is, we're not going to have any chance to catch him later on today.
Yeah, once they get out of the draft, it's going to be really tough to make the position, especially given the fact that you mentioned, Josh Lee, that there are no pit stops for fuel and tires. So whatever progress you're going to make, you're going to have to make on track, which for Buescher on backwards, it's going to be a little tough now that the gap is up to 1.5 seconds. Wilby is trying his best to break through the number 5 car, and hard on the brakes there as the smoke billows out of the left side of the car. And here's a look back at some of the GT4 talent. Looks like one driver is on pit road. That is Greg Profeta in the number 3, one of the BMWs in this field. So looks like he might have some damage early. He's going to hop on the brakes into his pit stall. May be out of this, but we'll just keep you updated on how that all plays out. But here, Joey Atterbury is the second place GT4 car. Istvan Deshi, the number 8 machine, one of the McLarens in the field. And there's the gap up to Alessandro Quintai. It's up to 1.7 seconds between those two. So it looks to be somewhat of the same that we see from the LMP3 class, just filtered in here.
The McLaren, a mid-engine car, rear drive, a little bit different than the Mercedes front-engine rear drive. As we get a look at the replay, exactly what happened here between these two GT4 cars. This is going to be for that third place position between the Mercedes and the BMW coming to the green flag. And unfortunately, just the Mercedes got clipped up on the curb, a little bit of door-to-door contact, and around he went coming to that green flag.
And that's tough for Louis Orgeval in the number 14, which Josh Lee, poses again to that point you made about this one being a sprint race. You get in trouble that early on, you're going to be at a huge deficit to everybody else. Now, he has worked his way up to 9th in the GT4 class, 21st overall, but once again, once you make that mistake early, or if something happens to you early, it's going to be really tough to get over that hump and get back to the front.
And it's also worthy of a reminder to everybody watching at home that as we watch the race for second here in LMP3, there are no full course cautions in the iRacing service when we go official racing on road courses. It is only locally enforced cautions. So you're not going to get that field bunching up after an incident like you would in the real world, as we see the battle for ninth that has bunched way up. This is Santos, Povolitis, Wortley, Frank, everybody back here from ninth on back, as we have a spin now with Dreyer going off the racetrack.
And Dreyer is off course, and you saw Povolitis in the number 7 car also involved in that. Joe Wortley able to go by. They were all trying to catch up to Rogerio Santos in his car, but it looks like Joe Wortley's in trouble into the inside Armco barrier. And there's the 17 off and away, so that battle easily fizzles out. Some more LMP3s in the mix. Oh, and that was right in the heart of that LMP3 battle there, Joey. Really tough for all of those drivers. Getting some damage there along the way. Might have to hit pit road in the opening 5 minutes of this Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge, as here's a battle for third in the GT4 class.
Yeah, this is Rodriguez and Laycock between the Porsche and the McLaren. The number 13 of Rodriguez, that's the McLaren on the outside, as you see Matty Laycock in that Porsche just try to get up into that third place. But be careful, because Garcia in a BMW is right there as well. How about this? Porsche, McLaren, BMW. Which do you think you would look the coolest in?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm going to look coolest in a Porsche Cayman. Josh Lee, you like any one of these three?
I'm thinking about the Porsche as well, but I gotta say, that McLaren GT4 just looks so mean.
Oh, yeah, it does. And there goes the McLaren of Rodriguez bullying his way through Laycock. He moves into third in that GT4 class. You were watching it just a little bit earlier as we tune in back in with the LMP3 class, which has separated quite a bit, but there are still some battles worthy of note. As that was the number 9 machine of Sander Dreyer, who was almost involved in that incident, got a piece of the contact. And Mantas Povolitis trying to catch up in the number 7. As here's a look with Ivan Ochoa Garcia from the Iberia region. So I guess you can call it somewhat of a hometown race here at Motorland Aragon, trying to look on Laycock here for fourth.
Laycock also on the back bumper of Rodriguez as well, Joey.
Yeah, this was that battle that we were just watching between Rodriguez and Laycock, and now we've kind of got the front row seat from the roof of this BMW here. I don't think that Matty Laycock in that Porsche is done with the McLaren. As we draft up along the front straightaway, you're going to see him pop out driver's left. Let's see how deep on the brakes he can go. The Porsche slides up along the inside, but check it out, over under from the McLaren.
That was a perfect crossover there from Thiago Rodriguez to make that move happen. You look at him right there through turns 3 and 4 as the number 20 machine falls back and now has to worry about Garcia slowly approaching. And Josh Lee, this might be the best battle that we've seen so far in the opening 7 minutes of this race from Motorland Aragon. All of them very competitive, and as soon as you get 2 drivers running together side by side, that third driver just has the best seat in the house, and they can take advantage once these 2 make mistakes. They've fallen off from the first 2 cars in the GT4 class, but Josh, how did these 3 drivers work themselves out as they go downhill?
Well, it's not a guarantee that those 2 in front are going to make a mistake. And right now, for Garcia sitting there in the 3rd spot in this line, if I was him, I'm kind of hoping that they both end up making a mistake, which it's more likely if they're running side by side, running close together. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. So Garcia might have to start getting the elbows out, might have to try and get by the 20 of Laycock and to get up to the back bumper of the 13 of Rodriguez to then make those moves himself. But sitting in 3rd, it's a good spot to be in, Kenneth, because you can see those issues in front as we see traffic now for our LMP3 leader. Nick Thyssen works his way past 2 of our GT4s. That's the slower 19 of Winton and the 3 of Profeta, both of whom have hit pit lane since the drop of the green.
And that's true, and now here comes second place Christopher Butcher in the number 5, weaving his way through without a problem. And again, Joey, that's the point that I made a little bit earlier on in the show about how you're going to have to deal with the multi-class racing and the congestion of traffic all around you. And already, for the first couple of minutes in, we've got a bit of drama there. We're almost 3 wide and around that GT4 category at the back end, where they have to deal with a lot of cars, LMP3 cars, in fact, in front of them. But so far for Thyssen and Butcher, seems to be business as usual. They make their way through traffic without a hitch.
I think the best way to think about it is it's recess time and everybody is playing on the playground, but everybody has to play together out there. Even though you're in different class cars, you can't just run over a GT4. Let's say if you're in the LMP3 class, you still have to get along on the racetrack. And even if you're in the slower class, the GT4 class, you still have to watch out for your mirrors behind, because you aren't the only car on the racetrack. It's just everybody has to get along on the same playground.
It's sort of a double-edged sword, Josh Lee, because I personally love to drive the GT4s more than the prototypes, but then you get so scared of all the prototype drivers, and as they're very fast, as they have way more downforce, they can go through this track much faster. You're just hoping that you don't get absolutely sent in from either direction, whether front, sides, between these LMP3 cars as they go around you. So as this traffic builds up, it gets a little more contentious between these two.
I think the lap traffic argument entirely is based on what car you're driving in or what class you're driving in. Of course, the LMP3s are going to say GT4s move out of the way. We're trying to race here. But the GT4s are thinking LMP3s be a little bit more patient. We're also having our own race at the same time as well. That is how multi-class racing works. You have to work with each other instead of against each other. So, of course, the LMP3s are going to think, get these slower cars out of my way. But the GT4s are just thinking, hey, we're trying to race for third. We're racing for our own win over here.
Yeah, for those LMP3s, especially guys like Nick Thyssen or even Christopher Butcher, they're thinking, hey, these moving chicanes are on our way. We don't want to lose position of those drivers behind us or lose any sort of time that we've gained over the first 10 or so minutes. But looks like for now, things have calmed between the LMP3s and the GT4s. You look at the two sides of your screen, top and bottom, race for fourth in the LMP3 class, and then on the bottom, that race for third, led by Thiago Rodriguez in the GT4 class. Nobody has been able to beat that McLaren for that third spot quite yet. Laycock had the pressure on for a moment, but it seemed to dwindle out a little bit later into the run, and Garcia in the number 21 has just been hanging around there in that BMW GT4, just trying to make sure there are no problems. That's ninth there on the top of your screen for the LMP3, Sander Dreigier, and the number 9 car. As he goes through, it looks like Mantis Povolitis also moves through another GT4 car off the final corner. Joey, that last corner, a lot of fun to drive. It's an uphill, sweeping left-hander. It's a lot of fun to drive on. Some other configurations of this track, you have a tight hairpin left-hander, but this one, it's really fast in these cars.
And crucially, you come in off of that huge long back straightaway as well. So you got to time the entry, let the nose of the car roll through the middle, not be too greedy on the gas, because if you do stand on the gas a little too soon, you'll just kind of push off the racetrack through that final turn here. And watching this battle for third place, Kenneth, I think that this is just such a picture-perfect battle of what GT4 is between the different manufacturers. It's just super cool to see them all out there racing together.
It's so fun. We'll watch if Laycock is able to catch up to Thiago Rodriguez for third place. A lot of cool stuff happening on iRacing Happy Hour, but we'd like to touch on the new World of Outlaws dirt racing game and their brand new 2023 season update, available now on Xbox and PlayStation. But Switch is not going to be ignored. On Nintendo Switch, this game will be out this fall, and if you want to learn more about this fantastic game, you can go to worldofoutlawsgame.com. And Josh Lee, man, this game is a lot of fun. Graphics are beautiful. I mean, the physics sort of ripped out of iRacing, and you get the realism, you get the excitement, and you get everything that goes into racing World of Outlaws cars, whether it be the dirt midgets, whether it be the sprint cars or the late models. This game is just so much fun.
For not having a proper World of Outlaws console game for so many years, it definitely scratches that itch that I've had in the past to play a console game with the stars of World of Outlaws and the cars, the tracks, now the Chili Bowl being on there. I'm excited to load up my Xbox and run that race on the World of Outlaws game with the Chili Bowl. But you want the iRacing side of things, Kenneth? The World of Outlaws Butt Kicker Late Model Series powered by iRacing, round 8 of 10 this Monday night at the famous Eldora Speedway. Whether it's sprint cars, whether it's late models, whether it's anything on dirt, racing at Eldora is always entertaining, and they can tune in right here on iRacing.
Eldora is a lot of fun. Maybe you could have your World of Outlaws dirt racing game booted up with the World of Outlaws Butt Kicker Late Model Series on another screen, watching as they get ready at Eldora Speedway at 9 p.m. Eastern. But the racing doesn't stop there. The day right after, August 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern, we'll see if any other driver in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series playoffs can join Garrett Lowe in the championship for they head over to the Monster Mile. Again, that will be Tuesday, August 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a thing, as 40 of the best eNASCAR stock car drivers take on Dover, Delaware. So you watch the lead right now. Nick Thyssen in the number 2 has pretty much pulled away from Christopher Butcher. That gap remains at 1.2 seconds. And Joey, I think for Butcher's sake, he's done a nice job of weaving through traffic and keeping pace with this too. More often than not, you'd see that second place car get a little bit stifled in the middle of traffic, but Butcher has kept his head in it, and he's bringing Aston Wilby with him, the car in third.
Well, he's kind of got to play both the attack game on the front, going through the traffic like you see him going around that McLaren GT4 car. And then you're right, he also has to keep an eye on the mirror because Aston Wilby is right there, only about a half a second behind. And it's been a tremendous battle. Thyssen hasn't made any mistakes out front. Butcher hasn't made any mistakes in second place. But got to remember, 30-minute race. We're just now approaching halfway.
And as you look at the timing sheet, Thyssen with the fastest time overall out of anybody, but in the terms of the last lap, Christopher Butcher had it a little bit faster, 146.207 in comparison to Thyssen's 146.378. So Josh Lee, we might have a battle for the overall lead on our hands in the final 15 minutes. If you're Nick Thyssen, who's been holding on to the lead all race long by a decent margin, are you starting to worry a little bit?
I'm worrying a little bit because at the start of the race, I mean, that gap got up to about 1.8, 1.9 seconds at one point on the opening lap. When all the mistakes happened from second on back, Nick Thyssen was able to pull away at the front. But now he's not necessarily making any mistakes, but he is just running right now at the front of this field and not running fast enough. 1.1 seconds, that gap down to Christopher Butcher, and slowly starting to gain as well, Joey. This battle at the front of the LMP3s is only going to get more interesting because either Nick Thyssen runs away with the lead and keeps it at the front with 14 minutes left, or we see a 3-car battle for this LMP3 class win.
And crucially, our leader is going to be hitting that GT4 traffic around the final corner that Kenneth was talking about not too long ago. Use the downforce to really just drive around the GT4 cars as second and third place here of Butcher and Wilby. Kind of get to use the draft down the straightaway, a little bit of an easier pass for second and third place, and just that little bit they were able to close up on our leader a little bit more.
That gap's fluctuating a lot underneath about 1 second right now. You can see it go down to about 9/10. Last time by, Butcher was faster than our leader, Nick Thyssen, but not by that much, Kenneth. His battle for the lead in the LMP3 class is still on, but the 5 and the 4 have a little bit more work to do before they're able to really hold a candle to the number 2 out front right now.
It's starting to heat up as the sun goes down here in Alacantez, Spain. So we have a lot of new things here. Happy Hour, a very new thing over the last couple of months. We have new cars with the LMP3s, the GT4s, a lot of new things, as well as a new broadcasting platform. We'd love to welcome all the viewers out on TikTok. We're broadcasting live there for the very first time. And for the TikTok viewers and for those who are just tuning in to their very first iRacing broadcast, what we like to do sometimes in the middle of a race, we like to turn things up, lower ourselves down, and give you the sights and sounds of what it's like to race and any type of combo on the sim. Some like to call it crank it up, but we'll take you iRacing full throttle. So here's a look at the battle for LMP3. Second place, Christopher Butcher. Remember, he was about 1.2 seconds off of the leader, Nick Thyssen. Well, now he has another car to worry about, Josh Lee. Aston will be in the 4. He's been hanging around behind the 5 car for a while. He looks for a move on the inside, but the door's shut. Now he goes to the top.
They lock it up on the outside as well, and right now this battle for P2 in the LMP3s, yes, it's great, but watch that gap to Nick Thyssen, our current leader in the LMP3 class. Under 10 minutes to go, he's 3.3 seconds out in the lead. They're going to need a big mistake from the two of Nick Thyssen if this battling 2 cars are going to want to catch up to our leader.
And if you're Thyssen, you are loving the view in the rear view mirror as we look at the battle for second in the GT4 class. Remember, Matty Laycock and Thiago Rodriguez, well, they're not done fighting yet, Joey Atterbury. They are way behind Alessandro Quintai, the leader in this GT4 class, but these two have been on it like it's for the lead. Rodriguez back to the inside.
It has been non-stop over-under crossover moves between the McLaren and the Porsche, and it has brought up Istvan Dexy back there in the 4th place McLaren. So this was a 2-car battle, but I have a feeling now with 2 McLarens into it, we might even see 3 wide.
Top of your screen, race for second in the LMP3 class with Butcher and Wilby. At the bottom of your screen, the 3-way fight for second in the GT4 class. They're heading to the last couple of corners. Laycock still behind Rodriguez as he aims to hold on. And Dexy, who had a problem a little bit earlier, dropped back to these two. Now looking to gain a little bit of redemption. Laycock trying to dive to the inside on the hard left-hander, but to no avail, Josh Lee. Rodriguez has to make sure he keeps that door shut and probably safeguarded for the next 8.5 minutes.
He's going to need to, because they've been switchbacking every couple of corners. I mean, it's been a rotating door of drivers in this battle in second place. Now they'll work their way down the long back straightaway into the sweeping left-hander. Does Laycock have anything to say to the 13 of Rodriguez? 2 tenths right now is the gap as they roar into the final corner.
And there goes Laycock, hard on the brakes, almost got into the rear end of that number 13, but Rodriguez runs wide. Laycock to the inside off the final corner. Give him second. So many crossovers. You'd think this was an NBA skills challenge, but inside the final 7.5 minutes as they go back for turn 1, this battle for second in the GT4s continues. A bit of contact. Rodriguez and Laycock up the track. Rodriguez bullies his way to that second spot.
That was a little bit of rubbing there in turn 1, and that's going to open the door now for Dexy. And we're looking at just under 7.5 minutes remaining. And something to consider here is the LMP3 car, that leader will dictate when we see that white flag. So where we have this GT4 battle, it might differ by up to a lap depending on when our overall leader actually takes the checkered flag.
And that's very difficult for these GT4 cars, right, Joey? Because, I mean, they're just waiting on Thyssen to decide when this race is going to end. How difficult is it for them as Dexy moves on the inside of Laycock?
Oh, and we're going to see another over-under here between the McLaren and the Porsche. You see Laycock really just running out wide, and Dexy underneath in the McLaren trying to get the run. But check this out. We also have Orgeval in the Mercedes. He's going to take it 3 wide up through the middle, or at least he thought about it. It's going to be Dexy overshooting on the brakes, and it is Orgeval in that Mercedes that's going to go up to 3rd place. But Kenneth, back to your point, yes, you just kind of have to keep an eye on that LMP3 leader, but here in iRacing, you have some extra aids. You can hit that F3 relative box, kind of see where he is, get an idea of when you are going to get that white flag 1 lap to go.
And we'll watch as these GT4s get ready for those last couple of laps. For Alessandro Quintain, the number 1 leader of the GT4 class, he has no worries. As soon as the LMP3s tell him this race is ending, he's like, okay, I'm good. But for everybody second on back, they are going to get their race on. They're going to get their fight on as well. And so will the drivers second and third in the LMP3 class. Aston Wilby remains behind Butcher's back wing, Josh Lee. But the matter is, he has not been able to get by despite the many attempts at pressuring the number 5 car. So if you're Wilby here, what do you need to change to get through to second?
Honestly, I think it's just raise that aggression a little bit more. You don't need to knock him out of the way. You don't need to hit his door or run that aggressive, but just try and make those moves. Go for them. I mean, there's a little bit of give and take, right? Whenever you're battling in the sim where you know you want to go for it, and here he goes for it into turn number 1, but then you see he backs out, doesn't push it too much. I'd say he's going to need to push it in at least one of these corners if he wants to get by, because the 5 has been quick. We know he had a shot to catch the 2 of Nick Thyssen for a little bit there. Once this battle really tuned its way back up, that's when they started to lose a ton of time, and that's how we got the 4-second gap. So Butcher is quick. Wilby's going to have to make that second place pass if he wants it.
Wilby's also going to have to think a couple of corners ahead, because he could have easily dove onto the brakes in turn 1, but he would have had the outside line in turn 2, so Butcher would have easily gone right by him. As we'll look back in the field, this is a fantastic battle building. This is Norbert Iwanicki in the number 11 machine. This is 8th in the GT4 class, Nicolo Forcianiari. And all of the drivers around, as there goes Nick Thyssen onwards on the inside. No problem for car number 2. And despite the fact, Joey Atterbury rather, that we've had battles for second on back, we've seen 8th and 9th go at it too.
No matter where you are in the field, you are going to be fighting tooth and nail for every scrap on the racetrack, and that's proven right here in this 8th and 9th battle for GT4. And right behind, you see the LMP3 leaders kind of working their way through. That is the battle for second place, and they're actually catching them in a little bit of an unusual part of the racetrack, Kenneth. This is in that long, sweeping corner that you were talking about earlier.
And you see there, Butcher goes to the outside. Wilby's going to follow. That's a really awkward sector of track. That long straightaway isn't, but the corner right after is. Looks like they'll get another straightaway to the start-finish line, back to turn 1. But the amount of chances left, Josh Lee, are dwindling if you're Aston Wilby. He's going to need to make a move sooner than later, whether it be with the help of these GT4 cars or whether it be by raw pace out on track. But that traffic only extended the gap between the 4 and the 5.
And that traffic is now gone, so this could be a good opportunity for Aston Wilby to catch back up to the back wing of that number 5. But we've been talking about the timer. We've been talking about how much time is left in this race. 3 minutes now. We are getting dangerously close to that white flag being taken. Lap times right now at about 1 minute 46 from Nick Thyssen in the lead. These duo of drivers in second and third have etched to that gap. 1:45.5 last time by for that 5 machine as he locks up going through the corner. Now here comes the 4, but he goes wide. This is going to be an interesting battle between Butcher and Wilby, Kenneth, because now seems like who can minimize their mistakes with more GT4 traffic ahead.
Butcher's going to go to the inside of 2 GT4 cars. That's a McLaren on the outside. That's P2 on the GT4 class. So this is really going to get interesting. He goes again to the inside as we watch. This is actually P2 of the GT4 class. Luis Orgaval in the number 14. Thiago Rodriguez and Matty Laycock. Boy, we've been talking about this battle for ages as there goes Nick Thyssen on the inside. Picking and choosing the times where he gets by this traffic, Joey. That's been really important for Thyssen is Orgaval has had a monumental comeback, Joey. We saw him sideways at the end of lap number 1, and now he's here. 3rd place in this class.
Yeah, he has just powered his way through, and crucially, there goes Matty Laycock up to the inside of Rodriguez. So that battle continues to rage on for what is now the 3rd place. We watch the LMP3 cars. That is your 2nd place battle in LMP3 as they go dicing through the inner mixed class traffic. That is exactly what it's about. You gotta get along on the playground together, and sometimes it is busy.
Wilby almost destroyed the back end of one of the GT4 cars going by at the exit of turn 1, but he has caught up to Butcher. Never mind that, Wilby way off the track, locking up the left side front tire, and the 4 car still a lot of work to do as they move onwards, and Nick Thyssen leads this race by 4.7 seconds, which Josh Lee, I mean, he's in cruise control right now. His lap times aren't as quick as those 2nd and 3rd who are pushing every single lap. That's because Thyssen has such a big gap to those 2. He can just hang around and run clean laps without overextending all too much.
he did have some slower lap times, Kenneth, but last time by, he was faster, getting through that traffic quicker. 145.7 from the two 146s, a pair of them for the second and third place drivers, Butcher and Wilby, in the LMP3 class. They're continuing to battle. That gap is now grown out. It will be white flag this time by Kenneth. Only one more lap remaining for our leader, Nick Thyssen, in the LMP3 class. Alessandro Quintai in the GT4 class will take that white flag for his class and try and walk home with a class win. First and second numbers right now in the lead of both classes. Kenneth, that means that the two highest iRating drivers in this split are looking to walk away with a good day of iRating gain with winning both of their classes.
Just a good demonstration of how these drivers perform out on the sim and how good they are. White flag in the air here from Motorland Aragon. Thyssen worked his way through the final two corners, 16 and 17 without a problem. They're second and third in the LMP3 class. No worries about James Cockrum back and forth in the LMP3s, and Wilby will have one more lap to be able to catch up to Butcher. And you made a great point there, Josh Lee. We haven't talked all that much about Alessandro Quintai in the number one car, but that Mercedes has pulled away from the rest of the GT4 field that continues to battle with each other for positions second on back. Wilby with an opportunity here, and Joey Atterbury, how can he catch up to Butcher and put on the pressure in these last couple of corners?
I mean, he's right there, and crucially, it's going to be the setup out of this sharp left-hander, so don't overcharge it into the hill right here. Nice apex, and now it's about putting the power down. Don't get too greedy on that throttle pedal. You only have two real passing opportunities left, and you're approaching one of the best braking zones to get it done right here.
They were getting up to turns 9, 10, and now 11. This is turn 12. Left-hander, hard on the brakes, like you said, Joey. And will be not able to get to Butcher's side, either left or right. And now through these tight chicanes, going to have to make sure he nails this without a problem on the brakes. Looks like he does so, and on the long straightaway, there's the draft on the back end of the 5. He will have one more chance in the final two corners as Nick Thyssen in the number 2 gets through turns 16 and 17, and he will be sure to grab the iRacing Happy Hour win in this Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge. Will be to the outside this time on Butcher. Final time into turn 17. Butcher's going to have to play as much defense as possible. They're going to go side by side to the line. Second place, though, will go to Christopher Butcher. Will be just short, and Alessandro Quintai into the final handful of corners will be the GT4 winner by a large margin.
Well, he hasn't crossed the checkered flag line just yet. He still has about a lap to complete. That goes to show the differences with multi-class racing, Kenneth. Nick Thyssen took the white flag a good long while ago in the LMP3s. GT4 leader just recently reaching that white flag at the start-finish line. But we see a good handful of GT4s and LMP3s coming home across the start-finish. James Cockrum ends up 4th. Ryan Ware ends up 5th. And we check back in with the number 1, Alessandro Quintai, who is just now working his way a little bit further down in Sector 2. He has to complete that whole lap, Kenneth, because he was only just in front of Nick Thyssen when he crossed the line for the checkered flag. So he's going to need to do an entire another lap. He's about halfway completing that now, and we'll ride along with him as he completes this final lap and a final walk-off for the number 1 of Alessandro Quintai, looking for the Happy Hour GT4 class victory.
Well, as he knows that Luis Orgaval, who's in second and everybody behind, has finished in the GT4 class, Alessandro Quintai has one more victory lap here on his hands. And on to turn 15, the long back straightaway to the uphill turns 16 and 17. It's going to be a cruising victory for the Mercedes GT4. Alessandro Quintai through the final corners. We'll see the front straightaway, and Barney the flagman, he'll take the checkered flag and win the GT4 class here in the Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge. He was basically the last driver out on track. Everybody else finished apart from Quintai, but he gets to hold the celebrations on for a little longer as Nick Thyssen takes the overall victory here at Motorland Aragon. Let's take a look at the unofficial results here in this Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge, and Nick Thyssen an absolute stomping on the field from pole to the win in the number 2 machine. Fantastic battle all the way to the very end between Christopher Butcher and Aston will be second and third. They'll hold on to the podium of the overall finishing order. You look at James Cockrum in 4th, Ryan Ware in 5th, and then all of the other LMP3 drivers that round out the rest of the top 10 before we get to the GT4 class, Joey.
Yeah, and then taking the victory in that GT4 class was that number 1 Alessandro Quintai, who we rode along with in that Mercedes. And check that out, pretty much put the whole lap on the entire field. Luis Orgival, we saw in the other Mercedes make the late race charge. Tiago Rodriguez had the tremendous battle in his McLaren with, I believe it was Matty Laycock who ended up getting disqualified lately because of incident points, and then Istvan Dexy in his McLaren with a nice comeback charge. And also Garcia in that BMW rounding out the top 5 was kind of the caboose on that battle the whole day.
And Matty Laycock, their unfortunate end to his GT4 race, as he was up there with the top 3 and looked like had a mistake, had some connectivity issues as well. Final reminder that if you haven't bought the World of Outlaws dirt racing game, you should now. 2023 season update has a bulk of new content, new features on this amazing game that takes you through the World of Outlaws world. Available now on Xbox and PlayStation, will be available on Nintendo Switch later this fall. So if you want to learn more about this fantastic World of Outlaws game, you could go to worldofoutlawsgame.com. Speaking of World of Outlaws, we'll have the Pro Series drivers go at it on the dirt side. The World of Outlaws Butt Kicker Late Model Series gets through round number 8 at the infamous Eldora Speedway. Coverage begins Monday, August 28th at 9 p.m. Eastern, so you can have 2 different types of World of Outlaw fixes for the Pro Series drivers and the game itself. And with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series playoffs, they take on the short track in Dover, Delaware. We'll see which driver can advance into the championship round and join Garrett Lowe after his stunning win at Michigan International Speedway. Tuesday, August 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Be sure not to miss the second race of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series playoffs. Well, we bring it back to us and recap what a great night, sunset, afternoon, evening it was. I'm not sure what to call it, but it was a beautiful day here at Motorland Aragon. And Josh Lee, I'll turn to you first. Man, the battles never stopped. LMP3 second place, GT4 second place. They were behind the leaders, sure, but they brought all of the fireworks today.
We saw the normal multi-class racing, right, where everybody spread out, and then once that GT4 traffic was reached by the LMP3s, that's when we started to see those gaps really come down, and we saw just pockets of battles and 2-car battles reaching up to another 2-car battle, making it a 4-car battle. And I'm going to go race these things on my own time. Anybody with a Class C license in the road district on iRacing can go and race the Falcon Tire Sports Car Challenge right now. 60% off new memberships as well. No better time to get in the sim.
I'll meet you there, Josh. I'll meet you in that time zone. I'm sure that I'm probably going to overshoot the first corner, but it'll be all okay. Joey, I mean, let's talk about Motorland Aragon, one of the newest tracks on the iRacing service. I think this happy hour certainly gave it the race that it deserved. Such a tight but very intricate circuit that is a lot of fun to drive with these vehicles.
It has a couple different faces to it. You know, you got the technical first half, you got the sweeping second half with the longer straightaways, and you got to remember there's multiple configurations that you can also run out here. We only ran one specific configuration here for happy hour, but it worked out great with the LMP3s and the GT4 cars, and it was just awesome to see and hear that LMP3 motor. I mean, talk about a V8 in that thing.
It's really powerful. It brought us a great race. Nick Thyssen, the winner in the LMP3 class. Alessandro Quintai, the winner of the GT4 class here in our version of iRacing Happy Hour here on iRacing. It was a lot of fun. We get to wrap things up as the sun sets here in Motorland Aragon. We'll sunset this broadcast this evening. So for all of those at iRacing Production, for Drew Adamson and everyone involved, and for my colleagues in the booth this afternoon, Joshua Lee and Joey Atterbury, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from iRacing Happy Hour. We'll see you next time.